Jack, a man of strength and kindness, lived in a small rural town surrounded by the vast beauty of nature. He was known for his love of animals, always ready to lend a hand to any creature in need. His small farm, nestled near a sparse forest and a swampy area, offered a peaceful retreat from the hustle and bustle of daily life. Jack was a man of simple pleasures. He found solace in walking through the woods, the crisp air filling his lungs and the quiet tranquility of nature soothing his weary mind after a long day of work. The forest surrounding his home was far from dense, its trees tall but spaced out, their branches bare in the cold winter months. The snow had transformed the world into a frozen wonderland, with everything blanketed in a thick layer of white. The harsh winds howled through the barren trees, their skeletal limbs creaking under the pressure of the cold. Jack's boots crunched on the snow with every step he took, the only sound breaking the otherwise silent world. The ground was frozen, and the once lively swamp near his home had become a solid mass of ice. The air was bitterly cold, so much so that Jack could see his breath clouding in front of him. He wrapped his coat tighter around himself, pushing forward through the wintry landscape, his thoughts wandering as he walked. His path often took him to the edge of the swamp, a place he found peaceful, though he had always kept a respectful distance from the ice-covered water. Today, however, as Jack walked along his usual route, he noticed something strange, a faint sound, a struggle, like something was trapped. He paused, listening carefully. The noise came again, closer this time, and his heart sank as he realized it was the desperate cries of a dog. Without hesitation, Jack made his way toward the source of the noise, his concern growing with every step. As he reached the frozen edge of the swamp, he saw them, 3 dogs, struggling to keep themselves afloat on the thin layer of ice that was beginning to crack under their weight. Jack's heart raced as he saw their panicked faces, their legs frantically paddling in the cold water beneath the ice. The dogs were clearly in distress, and without thinking, Jack rushed to help. He didn't hesitate, knowing that he had to act fast to save them. The snow continued to fall around him, the world holding its breath as Jack carefully approached the edge of the ice. The dogs looked up at him, their eyes filled with fear and hope, and Jack knew that he couldn't let him down. 3 young golden retrievers, small and wild, roamed the forest in search of food and shelter. They were abandoned, left to survive on their own in the harsh winter cold. Their golden coats were matted with dirt, their bodies thin from hunger, and their eyes reflected the uncertainty of their existence. The forest was their home now, but it offered little comfort. The biting cold made it difficult to find warmth, and the thick snow covered the ground, hiding the dangers that lay beneath. The 3 puppies, siblings in their struggle to survive, moved cautiously through the trees. Their tiny paws left faint impressions in the snow as they scurried about, their hunger driving them to explore further into the woods. They had learned to be resourceful, digging through the snow and searching for scraps of food, but with no one to guide them, no safe place to rest. Every day felt like a fight for survival. The cold was unbearable, but they had no choice but to keep moving. As they ventured further, They unknowingly came close to a frozen pond. The ice was not thick enough to support their weight, and the danger of falling through was hidden beneath the layer of snow. The pups, distracted by the pursuit of something they could eat, did not notice the treacherous patch of ice. As they played, one of the puppies, a small golden ball of energy, bounded too close to the edge of the ice. Before it could stop, its tiny paws slipped, and with a sharp cry, it plunged into the freezing water beneath. The cold water took hold of the puppy instantly, the shock freezing its limbs. The two other puppies yelped in panic as they tried to reach their sibling. But their own weight was too much for the thin ice. Desperate to save the fallen pup, they rushed toward the edge. But in their haste, they too lost their footing. With a horrible crack, both puppies fell into the icy water. Their cries echoed through the silent forest as they struggled to stay afloat, their tiny bodies trembling in the frigid water. The ice beneath them cracked and groaned, threatening to swallow them whole. Their desperation was palpable, the sound of their cries weak but filled with fear. In that moment, the three puppies were utterly helpless, trapped in a situation beyond their control. Jack, who had been walking through the forest, heard the faint cries. The wind carried the sound to his ears, and it stopped him in his tracks. His heart skipped a beat as he recognized the fear and distress in the noise. Without a second thought, Jack sprinted toward the source of the sound. The desperate cries of the puppies grew louder with each step, urging him forward. As he neared the edge of the frozen pond, he saw them, three tiny golden retrievers struggling in the cold water. The sight of them, their golden fur soaked and their eyes wide with panic, tore at his heart. Jack knew he had to act quickly. Jack ran toward the frozen pond with urgency, his heart pounding in his chest. The cries of the three puppies grew louder as he neared the edge of the ice. When he arrived, the sight before him made his stomach churn. One of the puppies had already been submerged completely, its small form barely visible beneath the icy surface. The other two were clinging to the edge of the hole, their tiny paws slipping on the slick ice, their bodies shaking violently from the cold. Their once golden fur was matted and soaked, and their eyes were filled with desperation. They were fading fast, and Jack knew time was running out. Without a second to spare, he scanned his surroundings. The cold was biting, and his breath came out in visible clouds. But Jack pushed the chill from his mind. He couldn't afford to hesitate. Spotting a thick rope tied to a nearby tree, Jack's instincts kicked in. He rushed over to it, pulling it free from the tree and tying a firm knot around his waist. His mind raced as he formulated a plan. He could already feel the ice beneath him cracking, and the treacherous cold water was enough to swallow him whole. Jack knew that the ice might not hold, but he couldn't let the puppies down. He braced himself, the rope tight around his waist, and slowly inched his way toward the hole in the ice, carefully positioning himself on solid ground. The puppies were still struggling, and their cries tugged at his heart. He had no time to waste. Jack lowered himself onto the ice, every step calculated to avoid any further cracking. His muscles were tight, and the cold nipped at his skin. But his focus never wavered. The first puppy was already nearly submerged, its tiny body barely visible now. Jack extended his arm as far as he could and grasped the puppy by the scruff of its neck. The ice groaned under the weight of his body, but he pulled with all his strength, hoisting the puppy up onto the ice. The small creature shivered uncontrollably, its eyes wide with fear. But it was alive. Jack exhaled in relief, not daring to pause for even a second. The other two puppies were still clinging to the edge, their energy almost spent. He knew he had to hurry. With great care, Jack made his way toward the second puppy, who was barely holding on to the ice. He reached down, grabbing the puppy gently but firmly, lifting it onto the ice. It let out a weak bark, too exhausted to do much more. Jack barely had time to check on it before rushing to the last pup. The little one was completely submerged now, and Jack didn't hesitate. He dove forward, plunging into the freezing water without a thought for his own safety. His body went numb with the shock of the cold, but he gritted his teeth and pulled the puppy up, wrapping it in his arms and scrambling back to the safety of the ice. Every movement felt like it took an eternity, and Jack's body trembled with cold and exhaustion. The puppies were all safe, but they were far from warm. Quickly, Jack wrapped them in his coat, his fingers numb and clumsy, but determined to keep them alive. The cold wind whipped around him, but he didn't care. He had saved them. After rescuing the three puppies from the frozen pond, Jack wasted no time in getting them back to his farm. His heart ached as he looked at the shivering pups, their small bodies trembling from the cold. They had narrowly escaped death, and Jack knew they needed immediate care to survive. As soon as they arrived at his warm farmhouse, Jack carefully laid him down on a thick woolen blanket near the fireplace. He quickly wrapped each of the puppies in a soft, warm quilt, careful not to move too quickly or cause them any more distress. The warmth from the fire and the cozy blankets began to ease their discomfort, and Jack made sure to give each of them small sips of warm water, helping them hydrate and slowly restore some of their energy. The puppies were exhausted, their breathing shallow but steady. Slowly, they began to relax, the warmth of the blankets soothing their chilled bodies. Jack watched over them as they lay there, his heart swelling with relief. The tension in his muscles, still taut from the rescue, began to ease as he saw the puppy's eyes start to flutter open. It took some time, but gradually, the pups began to show signs of recovery. They moved their heads, their little bodies still weak but now more alert. One by one, they lifted their heads, their golden fur matted and wet from the icy water, but their eyes were filled with gratitude. Jack could see the light returning in their eyes, a quiet recognition that they were safe now. As the minutes passed, the puppies' energy returned in small bursts. They wagged their tails, their eyes never leaving Jack. There was no fear left in them, just the calm sense of trust that only an animal can offer when it feels secure and cared for. Jack smiled as he watched them, feeling a deep bond growing between him and these three little survivors. Despite their wild, abandoned beginnings, these puppies had found their way into Jack's heart, and he knew they would never have to face that kind of danger again. As they recovered, the puppies snuggled closer to one another for warmth, and Jack felt a wave of love for these creatures who had been through so much. They were no longer wild strays. They were now part of his family. And Jack knew, as he watched them rest peacefully in the warmth of his home, that the bond they shared was something special, something unspoken but deeply felt. He was no longer just a man who had saved their lives. He was now a protector, a caregiver, and a friend. The puppies had found their way into his life, and Jack couldn't help but feel grateful for the unexpected bond that had formed between them. It wasn't just about the rescue. It was about the love and connection that had blossomed between him and the 3 golden retrievers. They were no longer alone. They were home. Jack knew that he couldn't just save the 3 puppies and let them go. They had already been through so much. And now that they were safe, he realized they had found a place in his heart. With a decision that came naturally, he chose to adopt them, to give them a home, and to make sure they would never have to face the dangers of the wild again. He named them Charlie, Max, and Bella, each name chosen with care and love. Over time, the 3 golden retrievers grew stronger and healthier under Jack's care. Their once thin frames filled out, and their coats regained their natural shine. They were no longer the scared, hungry puppies that had been found in the freezing water. They had transformed into playful, energetic dogs who adored Jack with all their hearts. The farm was a perfect home for them, with acres of land to run and explore. Jack would watch them as they chased each other across the fields, their laughter like barks filling the air, and it was hard to believe they had ever been in danger. The bond between Jack and the puppies deepened every day. They followed him around the farm, always by his side, loyal and loving. Jack found himself talking to them as if they were human companions, sharing his thoughts and stories, and they seemed to listen with an understanding that only animals who truly love their owners could have. Jack had always believed that animals could bring joy into one's life. But these 3 had shown him a deeper truth, that love and loyalty go beyond words and that the bond between a human and a dog is something powerful and unbreakable. The dogs were no longer wild, abandoned creatures. They were his family now. In the quiet moments, when Jack sat on his porch, watching the sunset, the 3 dogs would sit at his feet, content and at peace. He often thought about how different their lives could have been if he hadn't heard their cries that cold winter day. But now, they were all together, and that thought brought him comfort. As the seasons passed, Jack's farm felt more alive, filled with the joyful presence of his 3 furry companions. It was as if they had always been meant to be there. Jack's life had changed in ways he never expected. The love and companionship the 3 dogs gave him were immeasurable. And as he looked at them running around, full of life and happiness, he knew that they had given him just as much, perhaps even more, than he had given them. Jack had saved their lives. But in return, they had saved his heart. The future was bright for all of them, filled with laughter, loyalty, and the unspoken promise that they would always be there for each other, no matter what.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.